Summer and winter programs for adults are the two that I'm most heavily involved with, and they're the two that I direct. Both programs are intended to look at developing computational thinking skills. The program is very customizable to each student's individual preferences, even down to the way they work. We've had really successful students who come in and they're, a senior in college, they're in their fourth year of their undergraduate degree, and they're looking for some research experience to as they start applying to master's degrees. The primary focus of the program is producing that final output of being able to say, I did a research project, I did this thing. You feel like
Okay.
something interesting is happening at all times. It does occasionally have the downside of feeling like you might be missing out on something because something interesting is happening all the time.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for agreeing to this interview. I'm very happy to have you here. And I hope we have some nice discussions here, especially regarding the schools, the Wolfram schools. The first question I want to ask you is about your career trajectory. I noticed that you joined Wolfram 2022 and you came from a math teacher position. So how was that transition for you?
That was, in some ways, it was a little bit challenging moving from the public education environment in the United States into a private corporate environment. But in a lot of ways, my education background really prepared me very well for the types of thinking skills and communication skills that really were important and were asked of me when I was working at Wolfram. So I was originally hired at Wolfram as a project manager, and the overlap of lesson planning, which is, you're thinking through short-term and long-term goals and the mechanics of what are you actually going to do, what kinds of assignments are you going to give, what kinds of questions are you going to ask, what kinds of documentation are you going to do in order to meet those long-term goals, and building up that set of short-term goals in order to kind of fit into the picture of, in this case, a whole school year. All of those skills are exactly the same types of skills that you're looking for in project management when you are developing a goal of where you want the project to be at the end, and then how you're going to get there, developing a timeline. And as always, in anything that involves working with humans or computers, you have to be prepared for unexpected things to come up. And so things that don't go according to plan and they shift your entire timeline, or, a small detail that you didn't account for that actually causes it should have been a big detail because it causes a lot of problems, and those kinds of things. And those are all of the same types of skills that I developed in the classroom working as a teacher. And so I did feel like those kinds of things really transferred very well. After I'd been with the company for a little while, I moved to the events team and started working a little bit more closely with Stephen, and got involved in the summer and winter school programs, working to help coordinate his schedule. More recently, I've had the opportunity to get into being the program director for both the summer and winter programs. And that has been really fun because there's been a huge element of the same, even more of the same types of things that I did as a teacher. So curriculum development, curriculum writing, planning out what all of those things were going to look for, or what all of those things were going to look like, and working on writing a syllabus, and planning out the actual instructional content for the programs, and in the case of the summer and winter programs, who's going to deliver all of that instructional content. I'm not the sole teacher in the classroom anymore, so it's who else is the content area experts that we're going to have come in and do lectures or run activities. What kinds of things are we going to do during the program in order to meet those objectives at the end of the program? So the winter school program is about 2 weeks long. The summer school program is 3 weeks long. So I'm no longer planning for, a 9 or 10 month period, but it draws on all of the same skills, the curriculum writing and the lesson planning, and how do you build up instructional materials in order to reach your bigger objectives. it's all of the same skills and all of the things that I really enjoy doing as well. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, I can see that you really enjoy what you do, and I can feel that. Um, Regarding the schools that you are a director, right? Um, are you director only for the winter and summer schools, or there are other schools?
So we do offer a few other academic educational programs at Wolfram. The summer and winter programs for adults are the two that I'm most heavily involved with, and they're the two that I direct. We do also offer a very similar program in the summer for high school students. We offer a program that is only about a week or two long and is fully virtual for middle school students. And we also have a couple of opportunities that last during the school year for students who are either in high school or college. We have our Emerging Leaders program and our Student Ambassador program. And all of those programs that I've just mentioned are run by our pre-college education team, which Rory Fulger is the head of.
I see. And how would you describe the goal of such programs? Is that to spread like how Wolfram technology can be used to make projects, or is that how would you describe this kind of bigger goals in terms of is there like a bigger goal for all programs or a specific goal for each program?
That's an interesting question to answer because I would say there's a few elements of what we're trying to accomplish with these programs. So, the number one is giving students, and when I say students, I might mean middle school, high school students, or in the case of our adult programs, I might actually mean college students, or in a lot of cases, we have a lot of people who are in industry. Every once in a while, we get to have somebody who's actually retired from industry come. So we refer to all of our program participants as students, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're officially students outside of that realm. One of the big things is giving these students an opportunity to do research projects in something that they're interested in. So we don't have the limitations that they might if they're doing a master's or a PhD program, where maybe they have to research what their advisor wants them to research or their PhD supervisor. Or if they're working in a lab, they, have to do what the lab wants them to do. So we have a lot more flexibility to give students an opportunity to work on things that are a little bit more interesting to them and not necessarily just interesting to whoever it is who's employing them or overseeing them. That provides a really fun opportunity for students because, they get to come in and work on something that they probably don't have an opportunity to work on otherwise. We also do I mean, all of the projects in our program are done using Wolfram language and Mathematica. So we have a real opportunity to show off the really cool and really wide-ranging things that our technology can do. So we will often have students who come into these programs and they'll say, I'd like to do a project on this topic. And we'll kind of look at them and say, okay, well, we have a function that does exactly what you're asking about. And often we kind of get, oh, well, that's a whole different, a complete game changer for whatever it is that they're working on. They don't have to write their own function in order to do that. We already have a function that does that. I believe in Wolfram language, we have, I think it's 8 or 9,000 built-in functions currently, plus the entire function repository that that the public can submit to. So the sheer quantity of things that Wolfram can do out of the box or using the resources in the function repository is simply mind-boggling. And one of the really exciting things about the program is that chance to show people what it is that we can do.
That's like a broad goal, like to show the power of the technology. And this is really nice. Regarding the winter and summer schools, what's the difference between them?
A couple of the biggest differences are just sheerly logistical. So the winter school is a shorter program. It's only 2 weeks long. We have run it fully virtually for the last 5 or so years. And it's a much more recent addition to our scope of programs. So the winter school program, I believe, started in 2021. The summer school program, I believe, started in 2022. So the winter school program, I believe, started in 2021. The summer school program, I believe, started in 2022. So the winter school program, I believe, started in 2021. The summer school program, I believe, started in 2022. So the winter school program, I believe, started in 2021. The summer school program, which was not always called summer school. It's gone through a couple of iterations in terms of the program name, but it actually started in 2003. So this is the 24th year that we're going to be running the summer program.
Oh.
So like I said, the winter program is a little bit shorter. The level of what students are able to accomplish during the winter program is therefore limited just a little bit more, because there's a pretty significant difference between what you can accomplish in 2 weeks and what you can accomplish in 3 weeks. The winter program also has been offered fully virtually, where the summer program takes place in person at a university outside of Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. That gives us a really cool opportunity for some pretty intense work during that program. So everybody lives together on a university campus in a dorm, and we can spend a lot of time together. We can have people working with their mentors at 2 o'clock in the morning in the dorm common area. We can have people who are sitting at lunch with laptops together, getting ideas from other people, or, oh, have you tried this other thing that I just learned about yesterday? Or just kind of bouncing things off of each other, which is really neat. Stephen also spends a lot of time on campus during the summer program, so students get a lot of opportunity to interact with him, sometimes in small group environments, sometimes in kind of bigger like talks or Q&As. Everybody gets multiple one-on-one, at least one-on-one meeting with Stephen throughout the course of the program, where they talk through what the scope of their project is going to be and what we think it should look like at the end. There's some check-in opportunities with Stephen here and there throughout the program as well. So it's the summer school program is, I'm going to be a little bit biased, and I'm going to say that it's more fun because it's in person, and it's, we're getting together this group of usually 60 to 80 people from all over the world with all different backgrounds, all different age ranges, ability levels, and we're putting all of them together on campus at the same time and letting them talk to each other, share ideas, learn from each other, and create new things. And so it's very fun. It's very exciting. It's an extremely intense 3 weeks, and I will be the first to admit that I go home and sleep for a week afterwards. But it's a lot of fun. It's a really good time. The winter school, because it's virtual, the winter school focuses a little bit more on developing some basic understanding. So we don't expect students to come in with as much prior knowledge, and we give them the opportunity to play around with ideas a little bit more than we emphasize the completion of a major project or writing code that is designed to be kind of in its final form by the end of the program. So it is a little bit of a different focus. Both programs are intended to look at developing computational thinking skills and learning how those ideas can apply to research, which means that, and those things just look differently in different contexts. So learning computational thinking to go in and solve a research problem at summer school means you're doing some pretty hands-on applied kinds of things. Whereas at the winter school program, maybe students are focusing a little bit more on, what does that mean? What does computational thinking mean? What does it look like in my life, in my brain, in the way that I approach things? And one of the other things that winter school is really intended to do is to give students a foundation that they can then go to the summer program and build on. So learn about the ideas, learn about the basics, become a little bit more familiar with Wolfram language, and then come to the summer program and build something. Or, run a lot of computational experiments and see what new discoveries you can make.
That's amazing, because I'm going to be totally biased in my opinion, but I pretty love summer school, especially because it's in person. I'm using my t-shirt from summer school last year, and it's really amazing because it has that vibe, For example, you are there, you are meeting people from all over the world, as you mentioned. And something that it really struck me, something, for example, on a Tuesday at midnight, we receive a message, oh, Stephen is coming and he wants to talk with the students. And you're like, oh my God, Stephen is coming. And it's like, everyone like, be ready to talk to Stephen, and, something like this. And this is really magical, like this kind of atmosphere that uh, makes everyone learn and at the same time meet a lot of very nice people from all over the world.
Yeah.
So
You feel like something interesting is happening at all times. And that absolutely, the slight downside of that is that when you've eventually crash and decide, I really do actually have to sleep. I can't just stay up for 3 straight weeks. It does occasionally have the downside of feeling like you might be missing out on something because something interesting is happening all the time.
yes, all the time. And it's really amazing. Regarding the type of applicants or the profile for the applicants, um, I understand that winter school and summer school are different from the other programs that you mentioned, but how would you describe like the perfect candidate to apply for a summer school?
That's a really difficult question to answer because it can be very broad. The program is very customizable to each student's individual preferences, even down to the way they work, and what they want to explore. So we've had really successful students who come in and they're, a senior in college, they're in their fourth year of their undergraduate degree, and they're looking for some research experience to as they start applying to master's degrees. Or, they're looking for something to give them some research experience to put on their resume as they applied for, post-college jobs after that year. Um, we have had we've had a lot of students who come in. Probably the most common, maybe about half of our students are in the uh, master's, doctoral, postdoctoral sort of stages of their career. So typically most of our students tend to be working on advanced degrees, and they have a specialization in a specific area that they have a lot of experience with, and they sometimes they want to learn more about that specific area. But a lot of the time we see students who want to come to our programs to break out of that mold a little bit. So I have a lot of students who will apply to our programs who have engineering backgrounds, or they have applied physics backgrounds, for example, and they really are interested in exploring the very theoretical ideas that Stephen has been looking at the last 5 or 6 years with his Wolfram physics project. Um, the biggest thing that I would say makes a strong candidate for the program is, well, there's two things. One of them is being familiar or being willing and able to get familiar with Wolfram language before the program begins. I will absolutely admit that we kind of throw students in head first that first week of the program. And we will say, all right, here's your project, go start working on it. So if a student has never opened Wolfram software before and doesn't know how to work with a notebook or doesn't know the basics of the programming language, they're going to really struggle to get started. And we kind of assume that they know most of those things before they arrive on campus. We do offer a lot of resources for students to take advantage of to learn those skills before they come to campus. But we kind of assume that they know those things by the time we've gotten to that point. So that would be one of the things that a student can improve their candidacy by completing trainings and going and doing courses through Wolfram U, and taking advantage of the resources available to them. The other thing, though, that I would say really makes the strongest students in any of our programs, and this is true for even our high school and middle school programs as well, is wanting to ask questions, wanting to know the answers, wanting to take an idea and see where it goes, not just give me a set of steps to follow and I'll follow them, but being comfortable, being flexible. So if you're exploring a research direction and saying, boy, this really isn't turning out the way that we expected it to, being able to take a step back and comfortable with taking that step back and saying, do I need to go a different direction, or do I need to keep going because I really do think there's some interesting results here, we're just not there yet, or do I need to start over? Is this idea just really not panning out? We offer a lot of support as students are able to make those decisions. Everybody gets assigned to a mentor one-on-one. Mentors are usually assigned to about 3 to 5 students in the program, so there's a lot of one-on-one opportunity to get some guidance from people who have a lot of experience doing these things. But those kinds of thinking skills and being able to problem solve and evaluate and then keep going, being able to continue pushing, being able to ask new questions. Okay, I did this experiment and I learned something really interesting. Now, where can I go from here? Rather than just saying, okay, I learned something interesting, now I'm done. Those are the kinds of those sorts of thinking skills, and that tenacity is probably the biggest thing that makes a student successful in one of our programs.
That's amazing. Uh, Especially because I understand that after the schools, for example, even winter or summer schools, um, there is the creation of a community, so to say, from those people that participate in the schools. And the idea is that people keep in touch, not only with the mentors or with the project that they started in some of the schools, but by still keep working on the topics. And I can see that many of people that participate in these programs keep posting like Wolfram community on Wolfram community and something like this. So this is really nice. And regarding specifically the summer school, I understand that there are a lot of different tracks, right? That each student with a different profile, different background can fit in, right? Can you please talk a little bit about that?
I can. I'm actually going to back up just a little bit because we're doing a bit of an overhaul to the summer school, not the way the program works necessarily, but we're actually renaming the program this year, and we are developing a whole new website. And yeah, it's really exciting. I've been working on it since the end of the program last summer, so everything's kind of about to get pushed live, and it's been really exciting. So the program, all of the updates that we're making are really to kind of better explain the way the program runs. So we really felt like the term summer school implied a lot more of sitting and listening to lectures. Now,
Oh,
yes, we do offer lectures in our programs. We do have students. I mean, that is kind of one of the big things that we offer in terms of the curriculum is the opportunity to come and learn from experts on different topics, including how Wolfram language works or some of the ideas underpinning what it is that we do. But that's not the primary focus of the program. The primary focus of the program is producing that final output of being able to say, I did a research project. I did this thing. So this year we're renaming the program the Wolfram Summer Research Institute. That's going to be its name moving forward. We are, like I said, redesigning the website and kind of updating some things to help describe a little bit better what the program does and what our goals are in the program, like you were asking me about earlier. In doing so, we've adjusted the names of the tracks just a little bit, but again, it's really to help clarify what those tracks are about and not necessarily because we're doing anything totally new. I keep describing it as new name, new website, same great program, that kind of thing. So the first track that we have is a track that is really intended to explore the ideas from the Wolfram Physics Project in more detail. That track is the name that's going to be updated for it that we're going to see this year is the Foundational Science track. The goal of that track is to look at those ideas that Stephen's been exploring for most of his life in kind of what do we see as underlying the universe and looking at using his methods of multi-computation and even just exploring the Rulliad a little bit to be able to connect those ideas to other areas. The second track that I'm going to talk a little bit about is going to be called the Rulliology and Pure Computation track. Now, I know Rulliology is a term that Stephen coined that term, so it's not necessarily something that people are as familiar with if they're not as familiar with Stephen's work and his writings. Rulliology is the idea that our universe can be looked at in terms of what do these simple computational machines do, and that they can produce some really complex ideas. So Rulliology then is the study of the Rulliad, which is the universe of all of these simple programs and what they can do. So pure computation, again, is kind of that idea of running experiments to see what happens. So not necessarily applying them to a real world problem, which is less attractive to some people, but some people really like thinking about those abstract foundational kinds of ideas and running those computational experiments. Let's take a look at a cellular automata and let's let it run for 1,000 steps and see if we get any interesting things that come out of it, or 1,000,000 steps, or whatever the case may be. So a lot of room for exploration there. The third track is applications of computation. We've referred to this in the past as our science and technology track, which, everything we do is science and technology. So we wanted to kind of narrow it down a little bit.
Mhm.
Applications of computation is an opportunity for people to come in, and it's what most people think of when they think of doing a project at our summer program. So, and it is the majority of the students in the program. Usually about half of our students are in that track. So looking at you're bringing in a research idea, or you want to explore something that's been proposed. One of the things that I haven't talked about as much is that we do have a really, really broad list of ideas and suggestions from Stephen and also from our mentors for things that students might want to explore. So a student doesn't have to come to the program with their own idea. They maybe can just say, I want to learn more about theoretical physics, or about the Rouliad and computation and how you can explore that. Or I want to learn more about biology and how these ideas can be applied to biology. And we've got a ton of suggestions for ways that students can explore those things and can look at those things. So we have so the applications of computation track gives us an opportunity for students to come in and say, let's think about how to apply computational methods and computational thinking to this specific field, or to a little bit broader, just kind of how you can develop those ideas in general. We also have our educational innovation track. So students who come to the program, and it's funny in this context that I'm using the word students, because people in the educational innovation track are typically teachers and professors. So they're coming with the goal of wanting to sometimes it's to improve their own teaching strategies and their curriculum materials by implementing Wolfram language so that it can give them the computational power to really explore ideas in more depth. Sometimes they're coming because they want to do a little bit of their own curriculum development and kind of how can I use these tools, and how can I give them to my students to build something with. On that note, sometimes we have educators who come and they want to build, say, for example, a unit, or they want to figure out how can they give their students a project assignment that uses Wolfram language to explore something relevant to their classroom environment. And so it's a little bit less of the actual how would you do the project yourself, and more how would you help students learn to do the project. The philosophy and strategy track is our fifth and final track, and it's the most recent one that we've added to the program. We just started that one a couple of years ago. And in some ways, it's the most it's a little bit different from the other ones. The philosophy and strategy track is much more focused on how do these ideas that Stephen's talking about with the Rouliad, or even just the study of multi-computation, how do those ideas interrelate with the ideas that ancient and more recent philosophers have been discussing? How do they get at the ideas that underlie our understanding of the universe and the world? So we dig really deeply into the ideas that Stephen discussed in his blog posts on observer theory, and there was one called On the Nature of Time. So talking about what does it mean that we're observers, and can we have an objective view of the world around us given that we're in that world? And what does time mean? And with a little bit of digging into then how does the ideas behind relativity affect that as well? So we kind of have this opportunity to it's a really interesting mix, because we've got this opportunity to take these very technical skills. I mean, Wolfram language is a programming language. You're learning how to code when you're learning Wolfram language. And then how can we apply the things that you can do with Wolfram language using those tools to explore these ideas in more depth? How does that inform our thinking about these ideas?
Amazing. Because this has a very broad spectrum of projects. And something that I really like is that when choosing the project for a specific student, you take into account its his or her background and what kind of project that you have that might perfectly fit to that particular person based on their interests, based on their background, on what they want to do during the school. And I think that's pretty amazing because you're not going to end up like um, working on a project that you don't like or there's has nothing to do with you. And I'm aware that sometimes if you want to change a project, this is totally doable during the school or something like this, especially in the one-on-one meeting with Stephen. And something that by talking to other people that um, demonstrated interest in the for specifically in the summer school, sometimes it can be people can feel a little bit intimidated by making a registration, for example, because they do not feel that they are experts in Wolfram language. They don't know every single function there is. And sometimes I have talked to people that said, "Oh, I'm not going to apply because I'm not an expert. I need to know how to fully program in Wolfram language." So talking to those people that are like undecided or afraid to apply for the programs, what advice would you give to someone that is interested to attend one of the Wolfram programs?
First of all, I thought it was funny that you said you gave the example of somebody saying, I don't know every single thing that's built into Wolfram language. And my immediate response to that is, neither does Stephen Wolfram.
Yes.
I've been in meetings with him before where somebody has said, he's kind of been live coding. He loves doing that while he talks. He loves to pull up an empty notebook and start exploring something and see what happens. It's kind of his thing. And so he said, oh, I need something that will do this. And somebody has said, oh yeah, that's this function. And they'll give him the name of the function. And he kind of goes, oh, now he knows all of the functions that go into our program, they're approved by him. But if he doesn't use them on a regular basis, he's not going to keep 9,000 functions at the forefront of his brain at all times. So he also is one who relies on our documentation and has, he knows who he can find out who developed that function, and he can reach out to them and say, okay, what's the details of how this works, and kind of build that knowledge. One of the things that I did mention earlier, it is of benefit to students to come to the program with some familiarity with the language. Depending on what you want to accomplish during the program, it's not necessarily a requirement. I will return to the point though and say it's absolutely of benefit, but I do also want to emphasize that we give you the tools to do that. So, and we're kind of going back to my personal background here as a high school teacher, is that I'm not prepared. I'm not interested in setting anyone up for failure. So before the program begins, and I mean as soon as somebody is accepted to the program, and even before that, even during the application process, I'm perfectly prepared to talk to people about the different things that are available to them and what courses you might consider taking through Wolfram U, and which ones are coming up soon with live instructors that are going to be really, really excellent, and which ones are even just a really short little video series about a specific topic, but that specific topic is super relevant to you, and you might find this video series interesting. So I really one of my goals is really to have a good understanding of what those resources are and make sure that students are getting access to the resources that are of most benefit to them. All of our courses through Wolfram U are free. So anything that students want to be able to dig into, they have the opportunity to do that. The biggest disadvantage to Wolfram U is that our company has been around for almost 40 years. We have a lot of resources, and sometimes they can be a little hard to filter through. So that's where I've tried to come in, is I've looked through things and I've kind of pulled out some of our best examples of courses, our most useful ones. And those are the ones that I will typically send to students. And I'll say, if you have a programming background, you should probably start here. If you don't have a programming background, but maybe you have a math background, then maybe start here. If you have a little bit of a Wolfram language background, but you know that you want to improve your skills, then I recommend starting with this course. Or if you have no background in Wolfram language whatsoever, you should start here with this other course. So I really have developed a pretty good understanding of what do we have, and I can usually make some solid recommendations for students based on their previous experience and what typically it is that they want to do. So I really do. I try hard to make sure that students have the opportunity to build those skills after applying to the program. You know, you can apply to the program and say, I've never done this before, but I want to learn. I'm going to respond to you and say, all right, then you're going to have some work to do before you get to campus. But I'm also going to tell you what that work is. I'm not just going to, throw you to the sharks the first week of the program and say,
Figure it out.
all right, here you go. Now you need to have already known how to program in Wolfram language. So we try to make sure that students have the support that they need in order to be successful. This is a program that has quite a bit of flexibility. We really want students to be able to work in the format that works best for them. We don't script the schedule for every moment of every day. There's a lot of what looks like free time on the schedule, and it's sort of, you should be working on your project. So we have there's a lot of flexibility. If students choose not to take advantage of the resources that are available to them before the program, then they run the risk of arriving on campus and not having the knowledge they need to jump in and be successful.
Yeah.
If they choose to not take advantage of the resources they have during the program, so their mentor and the lectures and all of the other materials and resources that we provide, then they may struggle to finish a project that's at a high quality of what they were looking for. Ultimately, that's their choice, but it's really important to me to make sure that I've given students what they need to be successful, and at that point, the choice is really in their hands.
Great. So I think maybe the advice here is apply first to summer school, especially if you're eager to learn and ask questions, and you're actually you want to have like a challenge, so to speak, to do something that you probably never did before. And you're not going to be alone in this process, but you're going to have all the tools and mentors and all people around you to help you and support you during this process.
Yeah.
So this is really nice.
Yeah.
And with that, I would like to thank you very much for taking our time to talk with us about the Wolfram program, especially the summer school. And
Absolutely.
I hope that a lot of people see these videos and get interested in apply to the Wolfram programs.
Me too.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Lucas.